Jai Hind, Namaste, hello and a very warm welcome to UPSC for everyone. My name is Abhinav and in this video we'll be discussing selected topics from the Hindu and Indian Express for the date 4th of October 2020. Now in this video we'll be discussing the following topics. Ministry of Information and Technology to seek cabinet nod for policy on AI based solutions. So Ministry of Information and Technology is looking to leverage AI platforms for providing many solutions like solving the communication barriers within our country. So we'll see what this news is all about. Then memorial to Gallants of Galwan, very important. Indian Army, following its great tradition, has paid homage to the Gallants of Galwan. So we'll see about the memorial. Extinct tree found after 180 years in Kollam Grove. So interesting news, important for your PT. So we'll see that. Interesting fact that this tree was found in 1835 and after 1835, never again were its samples or specimens collected. It is only after 1835 and 180 years that in 2020 it has been found again in the Kollam Grove. Moratorium loans up to 2 crore may get relief interest on interest likely to be waived. So this is Centre's affidavit in the ongoing petition in Supreme Court which is seeking relief on interest. We have discussed the moratorium on loans issue in detail. So it is also a part of that. So we'll see what the Centre is saying. Basically, Centre is saying that we'll take all the burden, but we can provide relief on interest only up till loans of 2 crore rupees and not just limited to individual users, but also it is extendable to MSME sector as well. India backs end weapons abolition. So 26th of September is an international day of abolition of nuclear weapons. So India made a statement there and it reiterated its traditional stand on no first use of nuclear policy. So we'll see that. French Pacific outpost decides on independence. So this is an island which is in South Pacific east of Australia and it has been under French control for 170 years. Now it is going to conduct a referendum on the question of independence. So we'll see which island it is and where it is located and what is happening. US Navy's maritime patrol aircraft refuels at Port Blair. So under the LEMOA agreement that we signed with the US, this maritime patrol P-8A long range plane landed at Port Blair and it sought some refuels. So we'll see what the agreement is all about and then we'll also see at the strategic location of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. India South Africa move WTO on COVID-19 prevention care. So India and South Africa are worried that the new vaccines or the medicines, whatever would be coming in the market, they would be subjected to patent regime and big companies and countries would like to milk out as much revenue as possible from those inventions using WTO regime and TRIPS regime. So India is seeking waivers in advance so that we don't face any problems in treating our population. So we'll see what this issue is about. Then exercise gosagar. So this is the second maritime naval exercise between Indian Navy and the Bangladeshi Navy. It is happening in the Bay of Bengal, North Bay of Bengal. So we'll see this news. Then Assam Gurkhas seek gazette notification for safeguards. So under the Assam Accord 1985, there was clause 6 which provided constitutional safeguard to people identified as Assamese under the definition of that accord. So now Gurkhas are also seeking section 6 protection. So we'll see what this section 6 is and what is the issue. So these are all the topics that we are going to discuss in this video. Now let's get started. Memorial to the Gallants of Galwan. So Indian Army has always honored its troops and it has done again. We are not like the Chinese PLA which has not even acknowledged the casualties that they suffered on June 15. So we have created a memorial for all the brave soldiers that died during the skirmish of June 15. And that operation was called Operation Snow Leopard. So see, this is the memorial and it has names of all the brave soldiers and officers. Now let us quickly get through the news. The army has built a memorial in eastern Ladakh to the 20 personnel killed in the clash with Chinese soldiers at the Galwan Valley on June 15. The memorial has names of all 20 Gallants of Galwan inscribed on it and is located at post 120 in eastern Ladakh. Operation Snow Leopard. It details the actions of 16 Bihar and attached troops led by Colonel B. Santosh Babu to evict a Chinese People's Liberation Army PLA observation post OP from Vayanala Junction area under Operation Snow Leopard. In previous videos, in different maps, I have shown you what is Nala Junction area. It is a very important area strategically. They successfully evicted the post and reached patrolling point 14, where a fierce skirmish broke out between the Indian Army and the PLA troops. And recently, PLA or the Chinese state, they also have something like a Martyrs' Day or a Army Day. They have converted that festival into a week-long festival. And even there, they did not acknowledge the martyrs of Galwan clash. So that speaks volumes about the kind of country China really is. Unlike the Indian Army, which always takes due regard and care to honor all our gallants and the warriors and the victors who give the supreme sacrifice for our motherland. India, South Africa moved WTO on COVID-19 prevention care. So for treating COVID-19, many medicines and vaccines are being prepared, right? I also told you about the concept of vaccine nationalism, which has basically two phases. Number one, countries are competing to see who develops the vaccine first, and number two, who gets it first. Now, the problem is whosoever develops it first would want to profit out of it. Of course, they would want to profit out of it, and they would do so under patent regime, that they will file a patent for whatever vaccine or medicine they make, and then they will get a patent. And whosoever wants to produce that vaccine or medicine within their own countries, they would have to pay some royalty, right? And this is a very, very big and good opportunities for companies and countries to make big profits. So the whole patent regime and the regime about IPR, which is intellectual property right. Intellectual property rights are intangible rights. They are basically your ideas, your thoughts, or your inventions that you have thought about, but you have not made them, or you are about to make them. But the whole idea or the intellect belongs to you. So you get intellectual property right. So even if somebody wants to make the same product, they will have to either pay you or they would be barred from making such a product. So there are big possibilities that when countries try to fight this COVID war, once the vaccines are out or medicines are out or even some treatments are available, then there could be cases where big companies, big pharma companies, which are backed by big multinationals and rich countries of the West, they would be filing patent charges, right? So India and South Africa have moved to WTO and they are asking for waivers. Every country has certain waivers through which they can waive off the patent requirements. But then again, that can be subjected to legal challenges, like legal challenges in the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague, and WTO also has its own dispute redressal mechanism. So to avoid all of such situations, India and South Africa have moved to the WTO and they are asking for pre-waivers so that they don't get any problems when they are actually trying to treat their people for COVID-19. So let us see what this news is saying. In a formal submission to the WTO, both sought a waiver on certain provisions of the international agreements that regulate intellectual property rights to speed up efforts to prevent, treat, and contain the COVID-19 pandemic. IPR hindering fight against COVID. There were several reports about intellectual property rights hindering or potentially hindering timely provisions of affordable medical products to COVID-19 patients. Now, maximum patents are filed by companies or individuals from very rich countries, and there is a very big lobby behind all of it and lot of vested interests as well. So we want to preempt all such problems. Many countries, especially the developing ones, may face institutional and legal difficulties when using flexibilities available in the agreements on trade related aspects of intellectual property rights or TRIPS agreement. Now, what is TRIPS agreement? We'll discuss everything in detail some other time, because discussing this will take almost 10 to 15 minutes and then that would be a subject for another video. Beyond patents, other intellectual property rights may also pose a barrier with limited options to overcome those barriers, noted the submission. For example, the EU in conjunction with USA, they are trying to bring in new patent laws which are over and above WTO, so they can safeguard their innovations and they want to monopolize over different things and innovations. So we will also discuss that in detail some other time. Policy on AI-based solutions. So Ministry of IT and Technology is looking for cabinet permission to enable AI-based solutions to be applied to different fields, including communications. Now, what would be the advantage of such AI-based solutions? For example, if you remember, we discussed a Bharati script, which was going to be a common script for every individual language or major Indian languages, right? So it would enable us to communicate freely or with great ease. So such a thing could also be done through AI based solutions. Now what is AI? It is artificial intelligence. So in AI, you teach machines to think like humans and perform tasks like problem solving to those machines. So there are many issues and ethical issues about AI and many more technical issues involved. Probably some other time. Even in the prelims 2020, there was a question about AI. So see now what UPSC is doing, they are not going for cutthroat things like what you get in your magazines, current affairs magazines. They want you to be generally aware of the things around you. Subject like AI, it has always been in the news for the past 4 or 5 years. They also asked about blockchains. We have also discussed blockchains in detail. So they also asked about blockchains, and we also discussed how Election Commission of India is exploring the idea of implementing blockchains in voting. So these are the types of questions that UPSC is asking these days. So I'm again requesting you, do not go for any shortcuts. It is not an easy thing. It requires consistency. You have to study every day. You have to be consistent with your preparation. You cannot go for shortcuts because shortcuts are nothing but they are failing. Just once in 2015, I think that PT 365 of some famous institute was very popular because there were many direct questions, and that year many questions came from current affairs. Since then, they have not been that useful, but now that they have made a name, so everybody is going after them blindly. And hardcore, there were only just 3 questions this time in prelims. So please do not waste your time. Always stick to the basics. People don't have clarity of basics and then they run after big things. So please stick to your basics. This will help you in the long term. Running after short-term solutions or shortcuts would not help you at all. Now getting back to the news. The IT Ministry is looking to use artificial intelligence for addressing problems such as language barriers that are faced by Indians in communication. Ministry of Information and Technology expects to get cabinet approval in a month to launch programs based on the next generation technology. Now see, India already has competence in IT field. We have a large talent pool, so we could use this talent pool for providing home-based solutions based on the AI platform. The AI would bring tremendous opportunity for India if the talent pool that the country has is used to solve various problems by using the technology. AI would be used for natural language processing, which could end the problem of communication by ending the language barrier. And to promote AI use, India is organizing a conference called the Race 2020, and it will be inaugurated by our Honorable Prime Minister. So when that happens, we'll discuss this. Now, what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence refers to simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to think like humans and mimic their actions. Whatever you see in sci-fi movies, that there are droids or androids that look like humans and they think like humans. So this could be the future, but it is still a far way to go. And if you remember, we also discussed how China has developed huge capabilities in AI. Their TikTok application, it has a very sophisticated AI platform, and China needs Indian market to train its AI, right? We discussed all of that. The term may be applied to any machine that exhibits traits associated with the human mind, such as learning and problem solving. So when computers learn to do all of that, then probably they will take over us, but then that is a far shot, because there are both sides of the spectrum in terms of arguments. People like Elon Musk, they don't believe that artificial intelligence would overtake us, but people like Mark Zuckerberg, they are afraid of artificial intelligence, what it could become. In fact, some time back, Facebook had its own AI and it started writing its own language and they had to shut it down. So this could be both a boon and a bane in future. It depends on how we employ the use of AI. New Caledonia votes in a referendum. So New Caledonia is an island in South Pacific. It is a French territory. It has been under French control for 170 years. See, this is New Caledonia, just east of Australia, right? And these are the features around it. The South Pacific Ocean, then Loyalty Islands, Coral Sea, right? So these are the little things about it. So now they are going to conduct a referendum. In fact, this is the second referendum regarding independence. the earlier referendum had failed, but it had garnered a large vote share for independence. And the analysts are saying that even this referendum would not lead to an independence, but it is a significant thing. So let us quickly look through the news. The French South Pacific Territory will vote in a referendum on independence. Voters are expected to reject breaking away from France after almost 170 years despite rising support for the move. Nomia Accord. The referendum is part of a carefully negotiated decolonization plan agreed in 1998 known as the Nomia Accord, designed to put an end to a deadly conflict between the mostly pro-independence indigenous Kanak population. So indigenous population is Kanak and the descendants of European settlers known as the Caldokis. So it is a conflict between Kanaks and Caldokis. The agreement was signed in 1998, and if you remember, yesterday we did Good Friday Agreement that was signed between two Irelands, North and South. That was also in 1998. So this is the way that you can keep both of them in mind. And this Nomia Accord, this is related to Caledonia, and that is in South Pacific east of Australia. US Navy's maritime patrol aircraft refuels at Port Blair. So we have seen increasing naval cooperation between the Quad countries. Like we saw recently, we signed an agreement with Japan for interoperability. Similarly, we have signed agreements, some foundational agreements with US as well. So under one of those foundational agreements called the LIMOA, the P-8A long-range maritime patrol aircraft of the US Air Force, it landed in Port Blair and it got some refueling and other logistical support. So this is the first time that a US P-8A has got access to islands under LIMOA. So that is the importance. Now let us see what is LIMOA. It is a military agreement between armed forces of India and USA that establishes basic terms, conditions, procedures for logistic support, supplies and services. The agreement encompasses medical services, training, spare parts, fuel, food, water, transportation, clothing repair, maintenance and communication services. If you remember, I have discussed this interoperability and these mutual assistance agreements in detail, and both sides are to gain a lot, especially for US. Now, if they can refuel and get support at Andaman, because Andaman is very, very strategically important, I'll just show you. Now I got this image from indiashastra.com. So thanks to them, credits to them. So you see this is Andaman Sea, right? And this is the Strait of Malacca. Now almost 85% of Chinese oil passes through Strait of Malacca. So if this region is controlled by India and the Quad forces, we can cut off the Chinese oil supplies and trade, and that would hurt China extremely and immensely. That is why China is going for BRI or Belt and Road Initiative, under which it is building super highways and power grids to connect China to Europe, and in between all the countries they would be joining this, right? And in future it would also include gas and oil pipelines. So China is trying to cut its dependence on this maritime route, but until that happens, and there's a long way to go for that, and now CPEC and BRI are facing big problems financially because the Chinese bubble is going to burst sometime soon, and because of this COVID, many countries that have been part of this, they are not being able to pay back Chinese loans. So, and Chinese banks are also under immense stress. So let us see what happens, but for now this project is halted. So this area assumes strategic importance, right? So you see there's rising Chinese interest in the region. This is important component of our Act East policy. You see, this is Bay of Bengal, Andaman Islands, Andaman Sea. And I also told you that recently some Chinese submarines were also spotted and then we sent them back, right? And if you remember, we discussed the Indo-Pacific article where we discuss how India is in the middle of Indo-Pacific region. So this is Indian Ocean and this is Pacific Ocean. And India is right in the middle, and this is Africa. So Indian Ocean starts from here to here. This is Strait of Malacca, and from here it starts the Pacific Ocean, and this is South China Sea region, right? So this narrow path is very, very important strategically, and the gateway to this narrow path is the Andaman Island. Even if China were to cut Isthmus of Kra from this area, still they would need to cross the Indian Ocean and the Andaman Island region. And that is a problem because we control these islands, right? So now we can see in future that these big quad powers in conjunction with India building up infrastructure around the Andaman Islands. One more you can see, these are the islands, right? And these are the facilities we have already created there. And this is the Strait of Malacca. Now back to the article. Interest shown by many. Several countries have expressed interest in getting access to the strategically located Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which are close to Strait of Malacca and global sea lanes of communication. Increasing naval cooperation. There has been a sharp increase in India's maritime interactions with the Quad countries on a bilateral basis, centered around information sharing, because through information sharing we can conduct cross-platform operations and also we can help each other. Now, we conducted a PASEX or the passage exercise when USS Nimitz was returning from South China Sea. So another PASEX would be conducted real time soon. Another passage exercise, PASEX, between Indian Navy ships and the US aircraft carrier transiting the region, as in July, is expected to take place later this month. In July, frontline warships of Indian Navy conducted a PASEX with the US Navy's Nimitz carrier strike group near the Andaman and Nicobar Islands as it was transitioning the Indian Ocean region. And let's see in November if Australia is formally invited for the Malabar exercise, which is a trilateral exercise. And if Australia is invited, then it would be a quadrilateral or a quad exercise. Now, foundational agreements signed by the US. They signed 3 basic foundational agreements. There are 3 agreements that the US calls foundational agreements, and they sign these agreements with special and strategic partners. They are Logistics Support Agreement LSA, Communications Interoperability and Security Memorandum of Understanding SISMOA, Basic Exchange of Cooperation Agreement for Geospatial Cooperation BECA, and the last one, which forms the backbone of all these, is LEMOA, because LEMOA actually allows the physical support and physical interoperability, right? Now, these are signed by the US with other countries with which it has close ties in military sphere. These agreements are signed to build the basic groundwork and promote interoperability between militaries by developing common systems and standards. If you remember, even with Japan, we are going for common systems and standards, mutual interoperability, right? They also serve as guides for sale and transfer of high-end technologies. Now, benefits of LEMOA agreement for India. See, number one, India can access the air bases or the naval bases that are being used by US or other countries. For example, if we sign such agreements with Quad countries, then we can use their bases as well. So that is one of the reasons. And we aspire to be a blue water navy. Now, blue water navy is a navy which has the capability to travel throughout the world. But traveling throughout the world will require resupplies or refueling. So such agreements would help us to halt at different ports and get those supplies. It gives access to designated military facilities on either sides for refueling and replenishment. A mechanism will be instituted for bookkeeping and payments, and officials who will act as nodal points of contact will be designated on both sides. So these services are not free, you'll have to actually pay for them. It does not provide for establishment of any bases or basing arrangement. So it does not cover any bases, it only lets you use some of the facilities of the existing bases. Moratorium loans up to 2 crore may get relief, interest on interest likely to be waived. So finally, the center, it filed its affidavit in the ongoing case about the loan moratorium. So what was happening that even though there was a kind of a moratorium, but the interest was not being stopped. As a matter of fact, interest on interest was being applied on those loans, and the customer said that it is not fair. So what really happened that your account won't be converted into an NPA, but you would still have to pay. You can just take some time off, but whatever time you take off, interest would still be running. So that was really unfair. So now the center says that we will give loan reliefs in terms of interest on interest for loans up to 2 crore rupees, but the magnitude of such a relief is very, very high. It can lead to distortions, and the entire expenditure would be borne by Government of India. Now let us see what the affidavit is saying. The center has informed the Supreme Court that it will continue to handhold small and vulnerable borrowers and waive the compound interest on interest accumulated against their loans during the 6-month moratorium. We have also discussed this moratorium issue in detail. Yes. Additional affidavit filed by the Finance Ministry in the Supreme Court. The waiver of compound interest is only applicable for loans up to rupees 2 crore. The relief of waiver of compound interest during the moratorium will be for which all categories? MSMEs, education, housing, consumer durables, credit card, auto, personal and consumption loans. So these are the categories that would get the waiver on interest on interest. The affidavit reasoned that banks would suffer a loss of 6 lakh crore if the government agreed to complete waiver of loans to all borrowers of all categories for the entire moratorium. Government to bear burden of waiver. Even for State Bank of India, a sweeping waiver would wipe out over half of its net worth accumulated over nearly 65 years of its existence. The only solution is for government to bear the burden of waiver of compound interest. The limited waiver may have an impact on pressing commitments to the nation, including meeting direct costs associated with pandemic management, addressing basic needs of common man, and so on. The government reasoned that moratorium never meant waiver, it only had meant deferment, and people also understood it because many people, they chose to pay their EMIs even during this waiver period. Borrowers had understood the differences between waiver and deferment of payment of installments for that loan. Therefore, a majority of borrowers did not take the moratorium. More than 50% of borrowers did not avail the moratorium. Payment of interest to depositors was essential for banking. This is what the center said. Small depositors, pensioners, etc. survive on interest from their deposits. So see, this is a whole cycle. I have made a post on my Instagram page where I have explained in a very simple manner how the banking system works. So if the banks do not receive interest payments, then how can they pay small depositors and pensions interest on their deposits? Because they would need something to pay back, na? So that is why government is saying that if you give such a sweeping waiver to everybody, banks would lose and ultimately small depositors and common man would lose. Unintended consequences can arise and financial stability itself could be imperiled. On concerns addressed in court about the downgrading of loan accounts from standard to NPA, the government said the resolution framework announced by Reserve Bank of India provides that loan accounts which slip into NPAs between the invocation and implementation may be upgraded to standard on the date of implementation itself. So basically, if there were some accounts which were downgraded to NPA, they would be restored to standard as soon as people pay their deferred installments. So it won't have any long-term consequence on the quality of loan. Assam Gurkhas seek gazette notification for safeguards. Now in Assam, there are always problems between Assamese people and the outsiders because throughout history, many outsiders have been coming to the Assam region. More so after the British came and they established tea estates, and with tea estates they brought in Bengali migrants, and that became a bone of contention between the Assamese people and the Bengali people, and then Sons of the Soil movement, and there's a very deep history behind it. So one of those groups that was settled from outside in Assam also include Gurkhas. So Gurkhas, they also want a notification for their own constitutional safeguards. Basically, a peace accord was signed in 1985 in Assam, which put end to the anti-foreigners Assam agitation from 1979 to 1985. Now it has a clause 6 which gives constitutional safeguards to different categories of people classified as Assamese people, right? But Gurkhas are not involved or not associated or not included in the definition of Assamese as per this clause 6. So they want to be included under the definition of Assamese, or they want this clause 6 protection to be extended to them as well, because they say they have been living in the region for a very long time. So that is why they are asking for such safeguards. So let us quickly see this news. The Gurkha community in Assam has sought gazette notification on the issue of including it for the constitutional safeguards accorded to clause 6 of the 1985 Assam Accord, which ended the anti-foreigners Assam agitation from 1979 to 85. What is clause 6? Envisages constitutional, legislative and administrative safeguards for protecting, preserving and promoting the culture, social, linguistic identity and heritage of Assamese people. Now, 14-member panel earlier had defined Assamese people as those who have been citizens of India residing in the territory of Assam on or before January 1, 1951. Now the Gurkha says that we have been living here since 18th century, late 18th century. So we should come under this history of Gurkhas in Assam. The Gurkhas were permanently settled in the scheduled areas in the last part of 18th century as grazers and cultivators and were accordingly given permits. Local Gurkhas fought for Assam against the Burmese invaders in 1826, resulting in the Treaty of Yandabu. They were declared as protected class by the British in the tribal belts and blocks according to the Assam Land and Revenue Regulation 1886. Now in January 2019, Ministry of Home Affairs formed a Clause 6 panel headed by retired bureaucrat MP Bez Barua, but 6 of the 9 members quit. The panel was reconstituted almost 6 months later, and on February 25, the committee submitted the report to Chief Minister Sarbananda Sonowal for handing it over to Union Home Minister Amit Shah. But some members of the committee made their confidential report public because of government's disinterest in processing their recommendations. Among the suggestions made by the panel were sealing of the Indo-Bangladesh border and reservation of 80 to 100% of the seats in parliament from Assam for the Assamese people. Now let us see what happens, because this is a very sensitive issue, especially in Assam, and against the outsiders there are many grievances from both sides. So this problem has to be solved peacefully because there has been violence in the past. So let us hope that the rightful demands and aspirations of the Assamese peoples are also met, and also the demands and aspirations of the outsiders who have come and settled in Assam, they are also met in a peaceful manner so that both sides gain something out of it. India backs nuclear weapons abolition. So this was a statement made on International Day for Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons, that was on 26th of September. Now what had happened, that in 2019 our Honorable Defense Minister Mr. Rajnath Singh had made a statement where he said that our no first use policy is always open for review. That means it could be changed. Now that was basically aimed at intimidating Pakistan, because Pakistan was time and again talking about nuclear war. And in 2019, many things had happened. So that statement was made by our Honorable Defense Minister. Now it had created some form of discomfort among various circles and various organizations. So India again reiterated its stand, and our stand is of no first use. That is, we will not first use nuclear weapon against a nuclear state, and against a non-nuclear state we will never use nuclear weapons. That is our nuclear weapons policy. And we also stand for nuclear disarmament. It should be in a step-by-step manner and it should be well planned. So we also stand for nuclear disarmament. So we have weapons, but we are responsible players. That is why India has got so many waivers under NSG, right? One day we will discuss NSG as well, because the world recognize India's responsibility in terms of nuclear weapons. We are not like Pakistan selling nuclear secrets to North Korea. It has been established and there were many reports back then, but we are not like that. Now let us quickly see this. On the occasion of International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons, India reiterated that nuclear weapons should be abolished in a step-by-step non-discriminatory process. Non-discriminatory means that all the P5 and non-P5, they should all let go of their nuclear weapons, and it should not happen that India removes all its arsenal today and the Americans say that we will do it after 2 years. No, it should be in a very equitable manner. India remains committed to the no first use against nuclear weapon state. The comments indicate that India has not revised its key principles regarding the weapons in its arsenal. India espouses the policy of no first use against nuclear weapon states and non-use against non-nuclear weapon states. India is a key partner in global efforts towards disarmament and strengthening the non-proliferation order. So that is all about this news. Extinct tree found after 180 years. So very interesting news that this tree or species was discovered in 1835, and after its discovery, its specimens were not ever collected again till now. So from 1835 till now, no evidence or no new specimens were collected either from Western Ghat or Eastern Ghat. It was basically found in Western Ghats by some British explorer. But after that, no specimens. Madhuka diplostenum, a threatened species of the Western Ghats, was last spotted in 1835. Interestingly, since its original collection, specimens of Madhuka diplostenum were never collected again, neither from locality nor elsewhere, and botanical explorations in Eastern Ghat and Western Ghat failed to locate the species. notes the paper on the rediscovery, and it was found in Kollam. Right now it was found in Kollam. So this is all about this news. Such small things can be part of your PT. Now there was a very interesting question in PT this year regarding elephant herds, that a female leads the herd. When can she have children? So now they're asking questions with deep understanding of the things. You have to keep your eyes and ears open for everything that is happening around you. You just can't rely on magazines or even my videos or any other source, and you cannot blindly rely on any single source. Please, you can get information from everywhere. Keep your eyes and ears open and try to take in as much as you can. That does not mean running after every other trend in the market. That means you should be aware of the things that are happening around you. Exercise Bongo Sagar. So this is a naval exercise between the Indian Navy and the Navy of Bangladesh, and this is the second edition. We started this only in 2019, and this exercise is going on in Northern Bay of Bengal. So just let us quickly go through the news. The second edition of bilateral naval exercise between India and Bangladesh, exercise Bongo Sagar, began in the Northern Bay of Bengal. Ships from both navies will participate in surface warfare drills, seamen evolutions, and helicopter operations. Corpat. The exercise will be followed by the third edition of Corpat in Northern Bay of Bengal, wherein Indian and Bangladeshi units will undertake joint patrolling along the international maritime boundary line. Now, international maritime boundary line is like land border, but it is demarcated on the sea and it is demarcated under UNCLOS. I have posted a video about UNCLOS in the South China Sea dispute video, so you can see it has a whole section dedicated to UNCLOS, right? So you can go and check what UNCLOS is all about. So folks, that is all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and also press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos that we post. Also, if you liked our video, please press the like button and please do connect with us on our Instagram page, UPSC for Everyone. See you next time. Till then, stay happy, stay safe, and have a great day. Namaste and Jai Hind.